Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas. Whether you're here in person or participating by Zoom, you are welcome here. No matter who or how you love, you are welcome here. Whether you ran in on two eager legs or arrived more deliberately with close attention to every footfall, you are welcome here. And whether you came in joy and elation or arrived for comfort in distress, you're welcome here. At the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, we strive to be a vibrant and inclusive congregation. UUFM is widely known as a safe haven and a force for social justice. At least that's our aspiration.
Good morning. My name is Pastor Isabel Call, and it's my honor to serve as the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan. We light the memorial candle this morning for David Lambert, a beloved member of our congregation who passed away last Monday. He was much appreciated for the services he led here and admired for his active lifestyle, running and cycling. Due to his progressive supranuclear palsy, Dave was not physically active in recent years, but he was mentally active to the end. We are sending our love and care to Dave's wife, Sybil, her son, Tyler, his sister, Leslie, and others feeling this loss most intently. And we look forward to hearing stories of Dave at a celebration of life when the time comes.
We're doing the chalice lighting a little differently today. As noted in the order of service, today is the first week of Black History Month. Our focus today is on decriminalization. We have a blessing for healing and decriminalization by the UUA's Reverend Kirsten Homblett Allen following our chalice lighting. And I'm lighting our chalice this morning while reflecting on a brave woman who used her unjust criminalization as a force for good in the world. The brave woman is Rosa Parks, born February 4th, that is just yesterday, 1930. And we'll have a
Here it comes.
Video now.
Hi, I'm Reverend Kirsten Homblett Allen, and I'm honored to offer you a blessing today, a blessing for healing. Maybe your spirit just went, yes, I need that blessing. This blessing is for you. Maybe your mind just went, I'm curious what she means by healing. This blessing is for you. Maybe your soul was like, well, I'm feeling just fine. I'm not sure what I need to heal from exactly. This blessing is also for you. I invite you to find a posture in which you are able to comfortably receive a blessing. Maybe this is by turning your hands up in a gesture of openness. Maybe this is by rolling your shoulders back and opening your chest a little bit. Maybe this is by closing your eyes or bowing your head, whatever works for you. As I'm speaking, you could imagine my words and their energy, this blessing flowing over you like a gentle wind or a slow-moving tide. For when we are fearful, for when our fear is justified in a racist, homophobic, sexist, xenophobic, violent culture, and for when our fear is misguided, motivated by stereotypes, myths, and lies from those who benefit from our division. For when we let our fear direct our decision-making, our actions, our politics, instead of letting love direct them. Bless us all. May we turn toward connection, mutual support, and courage. May the knowledge that we belong to one another be healing. For when we try to do the next right thing, and for when we are unable to do the right thing, even when we want to. For when it's really unclear what the right thing is, and for when there is no right thing at all. Bless us all. May you remember that you are not the worst thing you've ever done. May we remember that none of us is the worst thing we've ever done. May this reminder of our inherent worthiness be healing. For when our minds strive to control other people, to control situations, to control outcomes, for when our need to control surpasses our need to connect, to be in relationship, for when this need to control becomes dangerous for others. Bless us all. May we know the peace of letting go of the need to control, the peace of surrendering. May the simplicity of just worrying about our own selves be healing. For when we feel angry and vengeful, for when harm has happened and we don't know how to stop the hurting, for when punishment feels like the easy answer, when what we really need is accountability. Bless us all. May we learn the skills of reconciliation and practices of restoration. May the warm winds of freedom and a vision of our collective liberation be healing. For when a few have everything and many have nothing, for when the scales of want and need are dangerously imbalanced, for when taking from one is a crime, but taking from many is business as usual. Bless us all. May we resist the compulsion to hoard and the narrative of scarcity that surrounds us. May the assurance that in community we have all that we need. May that assurance be healing. This blessing is for you. May this blessing be healing.
For our acknowledgement this morning, I have a few words about justice. The United States judicial system is rooted in retributive justice, which focuses on identifying a broken law, a criminal, and a punishment. There are alternatives. One of them is restorative justice, which helps the community come together and listen to learn about the harm. In restorative justice, the community tries to understand the needs and responsibilities of everyone and how they can cooperate to promote healing. Instead of incarceration, imposed restrictions, and coercion, the tools used in restorative justice are support and trust. 30 tribal governments in the United States are reclaiming restorative practices and writing them into their tribal governance documents. The Prairie Band Potawatomi, one of 4 federally recognized indigenous nations of what is known now as the state of Kansas, has a peacemakers circle as a part of their court system. In my reading of their law and order code, parties in virtually any dispute can choose to use the peacemakers circle. Today, we will reflect more on the justice system and the pain caused by a logic that criminalizes our siblings. Let us begin in gratitude for the ancestors of this land who knew a better way, and their descendants who can help us realize our potential for restoration. Chief Justice Emeritus Robert Yazzie of the Navajo Nation Supreme Court says this: "To learn about peacemaking takes a lifetime. The more you learn, the more you can see that peacemaking is working everywhere in the world." May it be so. May we realize our potential as fellow peacemakers. So I invite you to rise and body your spirit for hymn 148. Let freedom span both east and west.
I invite the young at heart and the young in years to come forward to participate in our Time for All Ages, an ancient myth adapted and read by Erica Shadow Song. And since it'll be a video, if you would like to just take a seat in the front row, that would be ideal. Or you can sit on the floor. Don't hurt your neck. Let me get this video.
This story comes to us from Hindu mythology, and it tells us how the beginning of night and day came about. In the land of the gods, there were the first 2 mortals. They were a twin brother and sister, Yama and Yami. Yami was the sister and Yama was the brother, and they were so close to each other that they almost could read each other's minds, and they had exactly the same sense of humor, and they were always together. And it was like, to Yami, it was like Yama was a part of her, like they were one. But there was something that Yami did not know. There was a destiny, a fate for Yama. He was the first mortal, and in this time of the gods, everything was bright and everything was always day, and it was always spring and sunshine. And all they did was have fun all the time, and it was warm and it was happy. But Yama was destined to die. He was destined to be the first to die because they knew that there would need to be somebody in the afterlife to welcome our ancestors when they passed, to welcome mortals when they came. But Yami, his sister, didn't know anything about this. One day she came running into the forest to find him. He was lying down by one of his favorite lakes, which was something he loved to do. She saw him lying there and she came over to him and she kicked him with her toe and she said, "Yama, wake up! Wake up, Yama!" But he didn't move. And she thought he didn't look like he was breathing. So she knelt down and she began to shake him. "Yama, Yama, get up! Yama, Yama, get up!" And when he didn't breathe and he didn't move and he showed no signs of life, it was like he was just a stick or a leaf, something without life. And she let out a great howl because she realized all of a sudden she was alone in the world and this part of herself had died. It was gone. It was taken from her. And she cried so loud that her cries shook the entire earth, and volcanoes started to erupt, and fire sprang up out of the land, and her tears flooded the earth, flooded all the bodies of water, until it looked as if the earth was going to be destroyed. And the goddesses and gods, in their land of perpetual sunshine and spring, saw what was happening. And they said, "We have to comfort her. We have to let her know this was fate. It was supposed to happen." So they came and they said, "Yami, Yami, it's all right. It's just death. He is in the land of the dead. You will see him again one day." But she was not able to be consoled. She cried, and the earth shook, and she said over and over again, "Yama died today. Yama died today. How can I stop crying? Yama died today." And then they realized that for Yami, it was always today. There was no time. There was no change. There was no distance. Always it would be for her as if she had just lost her brother, her twin, a piece of herself. And so the gods created the first night. The sun went down and a blanket of night fell across the earth. The stars came out. And the animals and birds went to sleep for the first time. And Yami, crying herself, also fell asleep, cried herself to sleep. And in the morning, when the sun arose for the first time, she woke up and she remembered what had happened, and she said, Yama died yesterday." And then the next day came and she said, "Yama died the day before yesterday." And her crying became a little bit less, and the earth stopped shaking and the river stopped flooding, and she became calmer, and it still hurt so much because a part of her had died. But it hurt a little bit less with each passing day until she would say, "A year ago, Yama died." And the gods saw that this creation of night and day was great wisdom for mortals because mortals must die. And it hurts and it's painful. And yet they realized that if nothing else, time could heal the worst of all wounds, the loss of one we love.
Not yet. All kids are now invited to join together in our religious education classes down the hall, starting in the Alsop room. The nursery is open for the youngest. Soul Kids is for kindergarten through 5th grade. Youth group for those 6th grade and up. After the classes, we'll all join up together for social time. Parents, don't forget to pick your kids up at noon. if they've been in the nursery, please help pick up the toys. Go in love, our hearts go with you. Go in joy, our hopes go too. Learn in love and grow in wisdom.
Here at UUFM, the offering we receive on Sunday morning goes to a special organization each month. And this month, February, our Helping Hands recipient is the Kansas Abortion Fund. And we have Sandy Brown from the Kansas Abortion Fund to come and speak with us, give us an update on the organization.
Can you hear me? No?
Now we can.
Is this better? Okay. I'm so happy to be here. For the last 2 years, I've attended via Zoom, and now I get to see the Swensons and Betty Banner and Pastor Isabel. Thank you so much for inviting me here. First of all, I want to thank you. We were discussing justice recently, just a few minutes ago, and I wanted to thank you all for everything you have done this past year for the vote 2, August 2 last year, to save our right to have an abortion here in our constitutional amendment, our Kansas Constitution. What an amazing effort. You signed postcards, you showed up. This is an amazing grassroots place right here. And I just really want to thank you so much. It was a busy summer. I don't know how many rallies I've attended, or so many people didn't know what to do. So they said, well, we can get the word about the vote, but we'd also like to have a fundraiser for Kansas Abortion Fund. So I went to fundraisers, and it was so much fun. Like the fundraiser in Bonner Springs, a little grassroots fundraiser with barbecue in a little park with a shelter and a band put together by people in the community. And that's what it was all about. We were stronger together last year. This state came together because of communities like Manhattan. So thankful for you. So the Kansas Abortion Fund, we got through the fall of Roe. We got through August 2nd, and we continued with our year. In 2022, we assisted 486 people in funding their abortions. They came from 44 out of the 105 counties. And Betty, I still make that map that you used to make. Betty used to make a map of Kansas with all the counties in it and color in the counties we assisted. So I just did that the other day. They were ranged in age from 13 to 46, and we helped them all. So things have changed for us, okay? People who want to get, because all the states around Kansas, most of them except for Colorado, it's illegal now to have an abortion. In Missouri, you can't get one unless the mother's going to die. Oklahoma, Texas. So everybody comes to Kansas or Illinois. So many times there are only so many appointments to be had. So some Kansas can't get an appointment. Kansans, where do I go? Well, they have to now go out of state, some of them. But we still assist them, no matter where they go. As long as they show that they're a Kansas resident, we will help fund them. The other thing is, we've realized that our model was rather stringent, and we've been able to, what in the past it was you had to be a Kansas resident and you had to show financial need, which happened to be at 110% of federal poverty level. So if you made $1,200 in the last 4 weeks, that was the cutoff line. Who can live on that, right? So now we upped that. Now, if you make $1,700 in the last 4 weeks, we can help you. And now we're seeing that we may be able to help even more people. We would love to get up to 200% of federal poverty level, help everybody who needs it. What else? Some Kansans cannot get their, they cannot schedule their appointments in time for the 21 weeks and 6 days that they have. They may be 15 weeks pregnant, but by the time they get an appointment, it's illegal. So they have to go out of state. And again, we assist that. I think the last time I was here, we co-partnered with 3 clinics here in Kansas. Now we co-partner with 11 clinics. They're not all in Kansas anymore, and they're all surrounding Kansas. We partner with them. We have relationships with them. It takes a lot of time and effort, but they know if they have a Kansas person coming, they can reach us and we'll say yes. Telemedicine has been a huge deal. Since last December, telemedicine became legal, at least for now. And there have been, and also medication abortion, bless you, mifepristone and misoprostol. So we're working with 2 other entities now in Kansas who are telemedicine and Just the Pill. And speaking of Just the Pill, we partner with an organization on the border of Colorado and Kansas called Just the Pill, and they're a mobile clinic on the border. So since I've been here last, folks, things have grown, things have changed, but our premise stays the same. We're still able to do it. I'll only be on the board another few years. I just turned 67 yesterday. I've been on the board for 10 years and running the board, and now it's time for me to step down as soon as we find somebody who would like to do that. But again, we're stronger together, and I couldn't be more grateful than to be here today with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. You can donate by going to uufm.net, then clicking the donate link and choosing the particular fund to which you want to contribute. If you're here in person, you can put your offering in the basket in the back. I'd like to invite you to use this time also to share your joys and sorrows this week. You can write on the paper near you, or if you don't have one, there's some in the back. I will read them later, or you can type something into the chat for Linda to read. And Chris or I will come around to pick up your joys and sorrows. Our offertory is a song of love and justice, music by Adolphus Hailstork, text from Martin Luther King Jr. love. Grateful to be here with you all and to open this time of our service to share our burdens, amplify our celebrations, to share, thank you, share with you all a spirit of generosity, vulnerability, courage, and compassion as we listen together. So we have a few joys here in the sanctuary. There are, I don't know who wrote this one, but I share in this joy. Here are 7 or more members of our community who will be going to the Kansas Interfaith Action Advocacy Day tomorrow in Topeka. So it's wonderful to be a hub of that engagement and activity, to be able to do that together. We have a joy from Susan Rensing. She shares, I had a rough week this week, but by talking with community members yesterday for Dementia Friendly Manhattan, I was reminded that justice is what love looks like in public, and it made me feel better with you in that. So Linda is our Zoom host this morning, and I think you're there. Linda, will you share any joys that have come in on Zoom?
Certainly. Jane Pelletier made the point that she's grateful for the view of the sanctuary that allows those on Zoom to see the children as they walk out for religious education. This inspires hope. And I'd like to say I'm grateful for the people who work and help out the Kansas Abortion Fund. I think this is a really good work that they do, and I appreciate all of them. And that's it for the joys.
Thank you. What sorrows have come in?
Jessica says she has a few concerns to share. First, send love and positive vibes for my dad, Gene Sievers. I believe Gene has been suffering from COVID, so we certainly hope he's better. And secondly, she says, my car and I had an accident with 2 deer 2 weeks ago. I'm seeing a chiropractor for my back pains, but otherwise no irreparable damage. I'm so thankful. It could have been much worse.
Oh, wow.
And and then Susan Adamchak makes the point, 2 deer, Jess, you have always been an overachiever. So glad you came through the encounter safely.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you, Linda. We have a few sorrows that have come forward here in the sanctuary. Kathy shares her thoughts, sharing her thoughts with Jean Sievers and also Shirley Obrock as they recover from COVID. Bryce is also still on the mend. Shirley and Bryce are still quarantining. And it looks like Kathleen let me know Jean Seaver's brother, Randy, is also recovering from COVID. So a lot of respiratory illness in our community. Kathleen from the caring team also shared some other sorrows and concerns. Deepak Subramani, who's Slawamir's husband, had emergency kidney stone surgery this week. They put a stent in, which is very uncomfortable, and it is supposed to be removed tomorrow. So thinking of them both. Michael Oldfather will be treated this week for squamous cell skin cancer on the top of his head, and he's also getting hearing aids. So sharing our concern with you, giving you our good energy for that. And I believe Jane wanted us to share. She's dealing with some skin issues. So, holding you all in our hearts, may your bodies heal, may you be cared for, and reach out if you need anything. Let's share a moment of silence as we honor joys and sorrows that have been shared and those that remain quietly within our hearts. We'll now have the opportunity for breathing and body practice from the Reverend Sky Williams Tao, coming to us again from Side with Love.
My name is Reverend Sky Williams Tao, and I use they, them pronouns. Welcome to this moment in time, whatever and wherever this moment is taking place for you. So today I'll be teaching you a movement practice around the themes of healing and decriminalization. And before we do that, I want to offer a little grounding, because that's often how I start my movement practices. So grounding looks like connecting to who you are. At least that's what I mean when I say grounding. And so one thing you can do for that is to touch together two parts of your body. It might look like putting your hands together. It might be putting your cheek against your shoulder. Might mean closing your eyes to draw yourself into yourself. Maybe wiggling a little bit or stretching. Connecting to your body, to yourself right now. It also means connecting into grounding, also means connecting into where you are in the world. And that might be or mean touching something that's not your body, right? So I'm touching my headphones right now with my hands. Might mean resting your head against a headrest. Planting your feet on the floor, connecting into where you are right now. So I mentioned that this is about healing and decriminalization. And for me, those themes have lived in my life in the movements of restorative or transformative justice and prison abolition. And for me, what those movements have meant, or a large theme of them, is around doing practices that are often hard, that are often uncomfortable, that often feel new to me. Being honest about our own pain and honest about the ways that we've caused pain for others. And putting in place practices that can help us take better care of ourselves and others. And for me, that sometimes means coming to this point where I have to do a hard thing, but it is hard or risky or emotionally fraught. And I don't know how or if I can do it. And so this is a practice I use in those moments, sometimes in really small ways, sometimes in bigger ways. And the practice is grounding myself, being right here, right now, and letting myself be in that suspended time, and then moving. So a way that lives in my body, that sort of rhythm lives in my body, is breathing in, pausing, and breathing out, and moving in the breathing out. Sometimes metaphorically, right? Not necessarily literally. So I gave you that body practice with breath, and I know that breathing doesn't always work for all of us for all sorts of reasons. So I want to offer that you can also do that with your hands or arms. For me, that might mean lifting them up with my palms facing in, drawing closer to my face, pausing with them in the air, suspended, and then moving them out away from myself, palms out. That might mean something as simple as closing my eyes and letting that action bring me back into the grounding of myself and where I am, and letting myself sit in that grounding for a little bit, letting my eyes stay closed, and then opening them and do what I need to do. So for whatever things you're doing in your life that feel kind of hard right now, but that feel important, I offer you that rhythm to play with in different ways, and the ways that are good for you, and that I hope you find yourself where you need to be for the next little piece of what you need to do.
Thank you, Reverend Sky. And thank you, Doug, for bringing all of these voices to us today. Justice. Justice is only necessary if there has been harm. Our justice system defines harm very narrowly. Only one part of harm is noticed, crime, which is defined as a violation of law, and it can only be addressed if it's proven. While our jails and prisons fill up with people whose crimes are documented by reams of paper, what of all the other harm? What of the harm done to the families and communities now bereft of their incarcerated brothers, sons, mothers, sisters, fathers, aunties, uncles, cousins? What of the harm that stole their land, their elders, their history, and triggered these inherently good people to act against the law, if indeed they did? What of the harm of redlining, gentrification, colonized curricula, cultural and physical genocide? What of the harm done by aggression pretending to be retribution? The eye for an eye that ripples disproportionately through over-policed communities. What of the harm of implicit bias and outright racism that criminalizes Black, Indigenous, and people of color more than it criminalizes white people? Even in Riley County, where between 2010 and 2020, the average rate of Black persons arrested for marijuana possession was 5 times greater than the rate of arrests for white people. What of the harm caused by those who are wealthy enough to evade our criminal justice system, wealthy enough to use it to terrorize those who would threaten their dominance? The US justice system is an outgrowth of colonial institutions designed for and by white male landowners to maintain the peace, and peace here means a stable economy. It was not designed to maintain a loving, equitable, multicultural community. Though it is intended to stop destructive behavior, narrowly defined, it is also highly vulnerable to manipulation. The part of the justice system responsible for apprehending harm makers, namely the police, is certainly vulnerable to corruption. Modern police forces throughout the South and Midwest evolved from slave patrols, and with no moment of reckoning, that ethos must still be woven into police culture. Meanwhile, the increased militarization of our police trains them to move through the community like soldiers. Resmaa Menakem, whose book, My Grandmother's Hands, I'm reading with the racial justice team, explains that the nature of policing in American communities has changed from protect, serve, and keep the peace to control, arrest, and shoot. Cops who used to walk beats now cruise them in police cars. Some American cities literally own tanks, end quote. Instead of moving through their shifts with calm bodies, they are alert like soldiers in their lizard brain, trained to assume that those they encounter are enemies or criminals. This is the logic of war, not healing. So I want to ask, can you feel the cost of criminalization? Can you feel it? We need to take a moment here to acknowledge so much death. With this moment to acknowledge the death of Tyree Nichols. We need to grieve the deep wound to his family and community inflicted by the police officers who killed him and the many other public servants who failed him. We have not yet grieved Tyree Nichols here together in this space. He deserves our attention. He deserves our love. He should be alive. On the racial justice team, we are exploring how the violence killing Black men is an expression of collective trauma. Resmaa Menakem walks us through the 10 centuries of European brutality that white people brought to this continent before they understood themselves as white. The way it's been codified into racism and institutionalized into enslavement, then Jim Crow, then mass incarceration, and the way that our bodies, not only our brains, our bodies continue to reinforce that brutality and trauma. American bodies, whether they are white or Black or indigenous or Asian, are conditioned to fear and therefore hate Black bodies. Healing will not come, he says, primarily from learning more facts. It will come from learning to feel. When I heard of Tyree Nichols' death at the hands of police officers, I was sad. But I was not sad enough. I live such a protected life as a white person that I feel safe from the harm that killed him. Most of my friends and family are also distant, and so I'm not a part of a grieving community. And that's wrong, because we are interconnected. We are a part of each other, like Yama and Yami. We are made of each other, made for each other. I'm glad for the grounding offered by Reverend Sky to help prepare us for the hard thing we have to do. The hard thing I have to do is confront the injustice of my distance from the terror and grief of police brutality and the specter of criminalization that the police represent to Black and brown and poor communities. I need to admit that I don't feel as angry or as sad as I should. I do feel guilty. And that guilt is not bad. It's better to feel guilt than to feel nothing. It is the expression of love that I have access to at this stage in my healing from a racist, criminalized society. The restorative justice practitioner Richard Cruz, who was incarcerated for 30 years and now works to heal communities, says that guilt is a good thing. In a restorative justice context, when harm has occurred, everyone needs to come to the circle, open to identifying and claiming our responsibility for causing the harm and our responsibility for repairing the harm. He says, when you realize you have some role or complicity in harm, even if you don't understand it yet, if you can't feel some guilt about that, then when are you going to change? You're not going to change because you're around a bunch of people that all feel the same way. There's never going to be a reflection point or an inflection point, I think, until you build relationship with others. End quote. I am responsible for proactively building and maintaining relationships to prevent future harm. I feel guilty because I know that I could be doing more of this. Because of my privilege, I'm not required to do this. Guilt functions to remind me, to hold me accountable. In a restorative justice context, my guilt doesn't mean I'm a criminal. It doesn't mean I should feel shame. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It means I have a responsibility to fulfill, relationships to build or repair. I don't have many relationships that connect me to the criminal justice system or people harmed by it. In a moment, we'll hear from Chris Bailey, somebody who does, somebody who works in the justice system. As we were preparing for this service, I was moved by a reflection by Nicole Presley, the Side with Love Field and Programs Director. I'm going to read part of it to you. She wrote, "Increasingly, our laws make it a crime to be fully human, to be homeless, to seek and provide health care, to ask for asylum or to migrate, to be Black or brown, to honor our children's evolving genders, to teach the real history of this nation." And I just want to underscore again, since we have Sandy Brown here, to seek and provide health care is becoming criminalized. In the US, the criminal legal systems collude to diminish the power and autonomy of the body politic, whether by disenfranchising entire communities through mass incarceration and voter suppression, or literally wiping people out of existence through both death sentences and extrajudicial killing. End quote. I agree with this from what I know. What I know is not firsthand. But when I hear Black, Indigenous, and people of color talk about the harm they've experienced in our institutions, I believe them, and I want to amplify their voices. So when I wrote the blurb for this service, I referred to our injustice system. I ran it by Chris, and I'm glad I did. He said, "The justice system is filled with people who are doing their best to care for families and vulnerable people. They are doing their best to fulfill their responsibility to heal harm. Calling it an injustice system implies that they are part of the problem." So I wanted to argue with Chris. I wanted to make it into like a debate, semantics. We could, iron this out, get the terminology, figure out where our point of disagreement was. But I didn't. Instead, I kept listening. And what I heard when I listened was love. I heard Chris's love for his colleagues and his love for his clients. I heard his frustration for the people who misuse the system. And in this, I heard love. Love for what the system could be. I hear Chris building relationships, the basic raw ingredients for healing. I hear him claiming his responsibility to detangle this painful web. And I'm inspired to keep listening, to stay in the circle with Chris. I'm uncomfortable because I still don't have any certainty that the mess in our society can be fixed. I don't know what to do when the grief comes up, when I actually let it come up. But that discomfort is exactly where I need to be.
Pastor Isabel asked me to also offer a reflection, and I'm by no means offering this as any kind of a rebuttal. I do work in, with, around, sometimes for our justice system. I don't do criminal justice myself personally. I have a family member. I have friends. I have close acquaintances, sometimes too close, who do work on the criminal side of things. And to me, it is not a disembodied force by any stretch of the imagination. It is people that I know, people that I see regularly. So my thoughts are more about our justice system writ large, and its inadequacies. We're lucky in the United States. Our sovereignty does not rest in a divinely appointed or anointed monarch anymore. We had a revolution about that. So in theory, we are us. We have decided to have a government and a justice system because we agree that we need one. In theory, it owes us allegiance, perhaps more so than we owe it anything. And from that springs our Constitution, our legislation, enacted as laws, and our justice system. Despite this, though, we are also still laboring under a historical and philosophical background with a strong Old Testament punitive element, one developed under self-interested monarchs who enjoyed a mandate from heaven or a divine right and were philosophically justified in exercising that power to suppress people, others who might threaten that power. So our justice system doesn't really, our criminal justice system at any rate, doesn't really put any effort into identifying the reasons behind what we define as criminal behavior. It happened. There is no excuse. The consequences will follow. Really, beyond sentencing, it kind of comes down to, well, this person was raised wrong. They didn't know any better, but here we are. That's not what I would consider to be a constructive approach to the problem writ large, but it is what the criminal justice system has to offer. Now, add into this, I think that our immigrant history, our modern day immigrant history, our slaveholding history, make it perilously easy for our body politic to dehumanize the other. So if they're no good in the first place, what use could any sort of rehabilitation offer? But it's not, I hold out hope because our justice system writ large and our criminal justice system in particular have progressed over 250, 40 some years since our revolution. Unserviced debt is no longer a criminal offense. We did outlaw chattel slavery. The vagrancy laws that followed the outlaw of chattel slavery are no longer on the books, or no longer enforceable at least. Women can vote. We can obtain no-fault divorces. And in any interaction with the justice system, criminal or otherwise, we're entitled to due process. We're entitled to representation when our liberty is at stake. And we can expect to get both in some form, not necessarily a satisfactory form to the individual, but those safeguards are in place. There's also, in the criminal justice system, a general trend gaining currency to do away with pretrial detention and bond wherever humanly possible. So our laws are getting continuously revised and rewritten. But there isn't really within that system or the legislation behind it the love that ideally justice looks like in public. That would have to come from another corner. I think it ought to be addressed holistically, but at this point in time, not very many politicians are going to be elected on a platform of rehabilitating criminals or communal justice, as opposed to the personal criminal enforcement. Poverty and race still go hand in hand with law enforcement interest or lack of interest. Clearly does make some groups more vulnerable to being drawn into encounters with law enforcement and the justice system. And that is very likely to do more harm than good, both to the individuals, perhaps even the victim, and certainly to the community at large. More harm than the behavior being focused on warrants, and frequently more harm than the legislature ever would have been willing to sacrifice. Our criminal justice system inordinately focuses on incapacitating, that is locking up the wrongdoer, and retribution for behavior that is viewed as harmful to the community. It further victimizes the community. It does not attempt to rehabilitate in any meaningful or programmatic way. Once again, rehabilitation sounds like giving some benefit to the perpetrator. Why would we do that? Well, if we don't do it for the perpetrator, I think we ought to do it for ourselves. I think that retraining our law enforcement so that they are not a violent hammer looking for a nail is a good place to start. And I think not using law enforcement as the go-to in any crisis is another good way to start. But I think that we're going to have to recognize that desperate people do desperate things. And punishing desperate people is not a solution. You may need to deal with an individual, but simply dealing with the individual isn't going to solve anything. It's not going to prevent the next individual in desperate times from taking desperate measures. Dealing with that desperation is what's called for. Poverty, deprivation, lack of options, inadequate health care, inadequate mental health services result in trauma, frequently end up resulting in child abuse, which passes the trauma on, exacerbates the existing trauma. Dealing with all of that is what it's going to take to reduce contact with and the need for our justice system's presence, over presence in the communities that are presently experiencing it. And I'm happy to talk more about this, but we're out of time. It's really too big a topic to address in this format, but those are my thoughts. So please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 129, Let Love Continue Long. And since it is not as familiar to us as some other hymns, Renee will play it through once for us. Our closing words come from the UUA's Reverend Deborah Hafner. Wherever we are, love is. As we enter another week of uncertainty in the world, let us remember that there is only one side, that of humanity and the planet Earth. May we pray for peace. May we raise our voices with our elected officials and engage as we can in acts of resistance. And may we remember to take very good care of ourselves, each other, and those we love. May we remember these words, adapted from the Unity Prayer. The light of love surrounds us. Love enfolds us. The power of love protects us. Love watches over us. Wherever we are, love is. And as our Christian friends would say, go in peace.